Okay, well, my son-in-law suggested that I do a YouTube video on composting for people who want to learn how to do it. So this actually turned out to be a good time, and I'll give it a try. Here are my bins. I got this from Cullen at the Highland Methodist Church garden that I've been volunteering in the last couple of weeks, so all credit to where credit's due. The idea is when you are building your bins, you want to build one extra so that you have an empty one to turn your compost over into. I figured I needed about 3, so I built 4 here. First, for those that are interested in the actual building, I'll show you what I've done. I've got 4 by 4 by 4 bins. What I did was put 48 inches on the end and on my gates, and then on the inside pieces 45 inches to allow for the 1.5 inches on each end. And I used 2 by 2s, and then on the gates a 2 by 4. I drilled through the whatever I was attaching. There's a hole drilled through it, and into the grain I would put a 4-inch screw, and then into these corner pieces I'd put a 3-inch. That pulls that tight as can be. And a vertical piece, you don't want it horizontal, you want it vertical so that the air can flow down. And wrapped it with a 1/2-inch wire mesh that you get from Lowe's. Then I made my gate here by another 2 by 2 and another 2 by 4 attached. Once I had this here, I attached it to my fence. You can make another 4 by 4 section if you need to. And then I also drove these stakes into the ground and attached them. So I know you can't see it, but these are just tight and sturdy as can be. I put a wire mesh in back along all 4 of them. And then you can see on the inside pieces where the wire mesh is wrapped on both sides, and how, I don't know if you can see that, but this air just will go all the way down to the bottom of your pile. And that's the whole key. One of the whole keys to composting is a ton of water and a ton of air. Then on my gates, what I did was put these fence posts in here with a nail on the bottom, 1 on each end. And then you get, your slats in there. You can see the air, gets to the whole pile from the front as well. And so that's what I did. My first idea on the gate was a post like this, and it actually worked over here because the post went down in the ground well, and then these things fit in here nicely. But what I found out is you don't know what's in the ground, and once I started pounding, I ran into roots and rocks, and it just pushed this thing away, and that just didn't work. So I altered that to make this to where they have a gate now. Okay, so for composting here in Raleigh, we get a ton of leaves, and most of my compost is leaves and grass. If I had cows or chickens or horses, I'd add their manure to it, because that would really help. But we get a ton of leaves, and what I do is I grind my leaves up in a wood chipper and a grinder, and that breaks the leaves so that the microbes can get to 360 degrees around each piece. It can get to it, because my goal is to have this be compost in one season. Next year at this time, I want to be turning this into my beds. So I chip it up, or I grind up my leaves just to speed up the process. You don't have to, but I find that works real well in speeding things up. Now you want a lot of green stuff with your brown, or live stuff, and I just don't have a whole lot. All year round we throw in our table scraps, and I'll turn this in. But what I found is the leaves fresh off the trees have enough life in them that if you put the water to it and give those microbes water. There's enough food in there that they can eat it up, and they'll work on it all winter. And then about the time they run out of stuff to eat on, it's springtime and we start mowing the grass, and then I start turning in the grass clippings to these leaves and spend the fall letting it work, and that pretty much works it down. And again, the whole key here is plenty of water. Just put your hose to it and really soak it, and then once the water drains out and those microbes use it all and it starts drying up in there, then turn it over and wet it again. All right, here, that's about it. Here is the last year's leaves. Now, I don't know if you can see this, the sun's at a low angle, but last year this stuff looked just like that. And it has been sitting for a year, getting it wet, turning it over, and now it's just a beautiful compost. It's kind of rare, but I actually have compost from 2 years ago because I didn't have my beds ready last year. From 2 years ago, this is just looks almost literally like soil. I mean, it's just amazing that this was a pile of leaves and grass and stuff. What I do is I strain it with my screen, and here I did 2 piles. I don't know if you can see it, but once I screen it out, then this is what I turn into the soil, and you can see that's from last year, and that's from 2 years ago, which I never have 2 years ago, and probably never will again. It was just a rare thing. But I don't mind every year turning this into the soil. We have red clay here, and red clay, you just can't grow anything but azaleas and pine trees in it. You can't grow vegetables very well, even though red clay is chock full of nutrients. But it's like Cullen says, it's like us trying to drink water out of a block of ice. The water's there, we just can't get to it. Well, when you mix this compost in with the red clay, and I do the same thing with the red clay as I do that, I screen it and then mix this together, it brings the pH to the balance that vegetables will just go nuts in and release all those nutrients and give you some real hearty, bug-free vegetables, because bugs and insects won't attack healthy plants. They just don't. And it'll give you some good vegetables. Finally, the last thing is kind of interesting here. This used to be where I stored all my brush. I just had this great big brush pile. Now it's down to a little thing because I'm making my beds here. But I thought I'd show you how interesting it is, whether you turn it or water it or do anything to it. All this debris eventually goes into beautiful compost. Here is about 5 years layer, just kind of cut through, of piling brush and stuff. This is this year's stuff. You can see the leaves are fresh up here and the pine straw. And you get down into this area, we're starting to get into last year's. Then it gets a little bit denser. It's a couple of years ago, 2-3 years. Here's about 4 years ago. This may be 5 years ago. But when you get down to the bottom of this pile, look how this has just turned into the most beautiful black rich compost, just with me doing nothing. I mean, that's the rain raining on it and time going by and no fuss, no muss. But I just think that's interesting that all that debris just turned into this beautiful, beautiful compost. All right, well, I hope that has helped or given you an idea of what you can do. And good gardening to you and good composting.